So we need to have just like a very real and honest conversation today about the reality that Donald Trump just always gets his ass kicked internationally by everyone. And I don't like it. And I want to know whether you see it my way and whether this is something you're concerned about. And I'm not talking about any kind of delusional. My framework for this is not some hyper nationalist. The U.S. needs to always come out, quote, winning at the expense of every other country. I want us working together with the international community. I want to solve serious problems in productive ways as an alliance of countries. But what I mean is, why is it that Donald Trump is always the loser in negotiations, often negotiations he shouldn't be participating in, always the laughingstock, always the guy that the adults in the room often aren't even inviting into the room anymore because his presence is so pointless and counterproductive? That's what I want to talk about today. It is embarrassing that the president can't stop getting his ass kicked day in and day out. It's boneheaded stupidity, and I'm going to give you some examples. There's lots of good ones, by the way, in a recent Daily Kos piece, which I recommend you check out by Lawrence Lewis, which was posted to our subreddit. Donald Trump, as an example, is now considering jumping into a $15 billion French bailout of Iran if Iran is willing to come back into the Iran nuclear deal, be back in compliance with the Iran nuclear deal. There are people so out of touch with reality that they see this as Donald Trump being the big, strong negotiator. But this is maybe the most ignorantly myopic view of international relations and specifically of the Iran deal than I can imagine. Remember, Donald Trump bailed out of the Iran nuclear deal, even though Iran had been in compliance ever since the deal was signed. It was an international embarrassment for the United States to just not stick to our agreements without anyone else having violated them. Why would we not stick to our side of the deal? The other countries, including France, had to try at the G7 to salvage what was potentially left. And one of the things that they said was, okay, if the U.S. is out, we get that it's logical that you might try to start researching nuclear technology and developing it, and it could potentially be used for weapons. What can we do to keep you in compliance? And one of the things they came up with was a $15 billion French bailout, which now Donald Trump is considering participating in because he wants Iran to be compliant with the nuclear deal. This is only a conversation. This is only on the table because Trump bailed on the nuke deal to begin with for no reason whatsoever. Just getting his ass kicked, getting it kicked internationally. Another obvious example is North Korea. We're going to talk more about North Korea later on in today's program. Trump is so desperate to be liked and so overconfident in his negotiating skills that he doesn't even realize that there's this long history of North Korean leaders manipulating the United States or trying to manipulate the United States. And Trump goes and meets with Kim Jong-un, no preconditions, plenty of pompous bluster, comes out thinking that he negotiated some incredible deal that no one else has been able to do, even though it was the same promises that the Kim family has been making for decades, claims victory, and then, of course, nothing happens. And meanwhile, North Korea, nuclear and weapons development just keeps going on, ballistics missile tests, Trump getting his ass kicked internationally again. One more example. I think you're getting the sort of gist of it. The Chinese trade war. Trump thinks, I'll throw some tariffs at China. They'll buckle down. The U.S. will win, however he defines that. Never mind that he doesn't even understand how tariffs work. He doesn't understand how the U.S.-China relationship works. And China instead says, okay, you're putting tariffs on us. We'll put tariffs on you. We'll get our aluminum and our steel elsewhere. We'll make a deal with Russia for energy development and exploration. We'll get our soy elsewhere. And Trump gets his ass kicked again, crushing farmers, crushing related industries, and the world is just wondering, what is this guy doing? Why is he doing this? Could we maybe not have a president getting his ass kicked weekly? And I've been very careful when I make a comparison between Trump and George W. Bush. I don't want to do it in any way that suggests George W. Bush was anything other than a neoconservative maniac with terrible policies. Bush didn't get his ass kicked in this way internationally week in and week out. Bush made terrible policy decisions. I disagreed with his moral framework based on born-again Christianity or whatever it was that he most recently ascribed to. He was a warmonger. Economically, I didn't agree with the guy, but he wasn't getting his ass kicked in the boneheaded way that Donald Trump is week in and week out. Our historical allies are looking around wondering, what's wrong with this guy? It's not just that they disagree with the decisions or the underlying policy to the extent Trump has an underlying political philosophy. They just can't understand why he keeps doing the most boneheaded things to his own disadvantage, and it's reflecting extremely poorly on the United States. The world, Trump may have high approval among red state Republicans 55 plus. I'm sure among that group, his approval rating is off the chart. But the world is wondering, how could Americans be so dumb? And this is the way they're thinking about us now. How could they be so dumb as to have voted this guy in the first place? We need to change that in November of next year, and I hope that we will.